Hey guys, this is Frankie Edgar, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben.
This is Diego Sanchez, Randy Couture,
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio UFC 242 preview show. Dennis Kuratov and Kasper Ozolowski in the house. Super excited to preview one of the most interesting main events in quite some time. And of course, the card that comes with it. Man, that's a really positive way to start the show, guys. And of course, I'm talking to Kasper Ozolowski. And the next man we're going to introduce in just a second. But before we do, Cass, I see you over there in your very, very sexy T-shirt right there. I don't know where you got it from. As Robert Whittaker would say in a press conference, hey, man, where'd you get that shirt? Looks good. Submission Radio VB T-shirt. Apparently, limited edition. And just quickly, how does it feel to be wearing something so butter soft, so tri-blend, so in right now? So nectar.
So nectar. It is soft, and Submission Radio just ripping off classic, iconic logos left, right, and center. Submission Radio, it's not VB, it's Submission Radio, it's SR. The two letters combined to make an iconic logo and an iconic T-shirt that you can buy yourself. Dennis, I believe you're wearing an iconic one as well.
That's right. Get a spread of Submission Radio into your life. That's the Vegemite Submission Radio. And I actually think that would be a taste of Vegemite that people would probably despise more than the normal one, Cass. But who knows? Yeah. Maybe it would be delicious as well. Anyway, these T-shirts, a limited edition. We mentioned it in the program a few weeks back. They're going to be sort of out of circulation soon. You guys have about a week left to get them some jump on. Get your T-shirt. And we do have some exciting stuff around the corner. We won't spoil it, but let's just say people that enjoyed a Robert Whittaker interview might like this next T-shirt, Cass.
And Israel Adesanya too as well.
Secret Easter eggs. All right, now, without further ado, we have our next guest on the line. You know, a guy from basically being the cornerstone of Submission Radio programming. He's also responsible for one of our most fun and off the rails episodes not that long ago. It was actually one of the episodes, one of the most supportive comment sections that I've ever seen in my life. Noah from his excellent work on Severe MMA and Sherdog.com here to help us preview UFC 242. Sean Sheehan, welcome back to Submission Radio. Great to have you back on the program, man.
Thanks, lad. Thanks for having me. And I honestly didn't think I'd ever be brought back on again after the last time because all the Frankie Edgar fanboys in the fucking comments section. And who was right? Who was right? Me. I was right. So all you little lads in the comments section with your type. Who was right? Me.
I see he's getting ready for another title shot at bantamweight, Sean. So we might have to get you back for another.
I said it. Go on, listen to that episode. I said it on multiple shows. I told Henry Cejudo that he should call out Frankie Edgar because win or lose, if Frankie Edgar had beaten Max Holloway, Henry Cejudo could fight him at 145. If he loses to Max Holloway, Frankie Edgar is going to go straight down at 135 and get a title shot. I said it. I predicted it the whole time. It's so easy to predict Frankie Edgar, what's going to happen with him. He's just given everything over and over and over again. He was a great fighter 7 years ago. I don't want to get into Frankie Edgar again, but he shouldn't be fighting anymore. Like his management, his trainers and stuff, they should be telling him not to fight anymore because it's not getting any better for Frankie Edgar. They're just making money out of him at this stage, to be honest. But Frankie was a great fighter, but it's not there anymore, and people need to kind of realize that. But yeah, there you go. I don't.
Good to have you on the show, Sean. Good to have you back.
What's that? That's the sound of people lighting pitchforks and coming over to you, Sean. Yet again, quick disclaimer.
I never knew you could actually hear a dislike comment on YouTube before, but there you go.
Yeah,
I can hear them off the distance right now.
Love our American audience. Have to put it out there. People got very upset that we didn't defend everybody in the States. We love our American audience. They're our bread and butter. We live for our American audience.
Can't take a fucking joke.
What's that?
They can't take a joke.
Listen, Sean, all right?
He's back at it again.
All right?
He's back at it again. We're going to be cancelled, even though no one technically puts this show up except us somehow. Our internet provider's going to knock it back. Sorry, guys. No more.
Before we get to UFC 242, Sean, obviously we've got to get your reaction really quick to Weili Zhang's lightning quick destruction of Jessica Andrade this past weekend. I know you're good with predictions. I wonder if you sort of saw this one coming. I mean, Zhang really sort of capitalized on Andrade's over-aggressiveness. What did you think of her performance?
Yeah, it was funny. I didn't really give a prediction for this fight, but when I talked about it in the podcast, in the Severe May podcast last week, I talked about how sometimes we think of champions and think how they're unbeatable. You know, even a new champion like Jessica Andrade. And I suppose when this fight was announced, we looked at Weili Zhang and thought, okay, she's won 19 fights in a row. I think she lost her first one, won 19 after that. Only 3-0 in the UFC with some very good wins, looked great, but she's getting this title shot because of where the fight is. You know, it's because it's in China and she's Chinese and she's getting it. And that was grand. That was the first couple of weeks. But then, you know, I went and watched a few of her fights, watched a few Jessica Andrade fights, and you think this is a fight that's really there for the taking for either person. Weili Zhang is a fantastic fighter. And as it came, you know, kind of talking on the podcast last week, I was thinking, like, if you're thinking fighter A versus fighter B, you're probably taking Weili Zhang in that fight, even though she hasn't proven it against, you know, the likes of, you know, the same sort of people who Jessica Andrade has proven it. But I don't think anyone would have predicted the way she did when it just went out and absolutely decimated. Andrade landed some lovely leg kicks to start it off. Jessica Andrade was kind of holding back a little bit for the first few seconds. I know it only went 42 seconds. Then she started throwing those big shots. And Weili Zhang did something brilliant like that. In 42 seconds, okay, how much can you see? But when Andrade kind of took a second to pick her shot, Zhang attacked. And when nice dogs. And when Andrade attacked, Weili Zhang was able...
The dogs are going crazy.
Sorry, she was able to counter. Is that really it? But it was that right hand as well. The counter right hand after she had been landing. I was going to say the word again. After she had been landing going forward, but the counter right hand hurt her and it was basically over at that stage. You know, the other shots were just Andrade's toughness and getting her out of there. But it was a brilliant win for Weili Zhang. You know, she looks like a star. And it's not just, you know, sometimes you have a star-making or star-winning performance when maybe it's a good matchup or someone maybe not gets lucky, but, you know, produces it once. And maybe you think, are they going to produce again? But for Weili Zhang, I feel like she is someone who is going to go on and, you know, she mightn't win 5 or 6 title shots in a row, fights in a row, but she might win a few. Even if she loses, I think she's the sort of person who will get better and come back again. So, you know, I don't think this is the last we'll see of Weili Zhang by any means, or, you know, she's going to be there for years and years to come. It was a very, very good performance for me.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing about this is just how the UFC were able to smartly plan their move into China and this move to actually work out for the UFC. I mean, Dana White must just be absolutely stoked right now. And I mean, I don't know whose idea it was to build out the PI over in China and move over there and do this whole thing and put this fight together. But you could arguably say that, again, people are saying she's going to be the biggest star, the biggest fighter that they have on the roster. Just quickly, for people that don't realize the impact of China on business and athletes, The Rock released that Hobbs and Shaw movie. I don't know what's going on with The Rock, but he's got some kind of crazy relationship with China, because one of the reasons The Rock is such a big movie star, people don't realize, is because of China. Because in China, they don't let people release older movies that they release in the States and Ireland and Australia. There's a very limited selection that they choose of movies that come in from America. So anytime an American movie goes in there, that movie automatically makes like $100 million, which is exactly what happened with Hobbs and Shaw. It's exactly what happened with Jumanji and all these other Rock movies. So what happens is when you can bring something into China, it automatically makes you money. And with the UFC having a Chinese champion right now, I think the UFC is hoping that it doesn't even have to be everybody in the country, but if you have like 30%, 40% of people who get behind her, she could be one of the most powerful UFC champions in quite some time. So it's just, it's an unbelievable move business-wise from the UFC. I mean, they've struggled for a long time to sort of build the next stars, and I feel like they're actually doing a pretty good job of it now. But Sean, just quickly, Dana White says that the next fight for Zhang might be somewhere else. Do you believe it's going to be against the winner of Michelle Waterson and Yoni Jędrzejczyk? And do you think it's a smart idea to have a fight outside of China after the big buzz that she's possibly attracting now after becoming champion?
Yeah, I think it'd be a mistake to have her fighting outside of China, to be honest. I think, you know, but I suppose that's easy for me to say. How easy is it to put on cards in China? You know, we saw the trouble over there a couple of weeks ago as well. So, I'm no political expert or anything like that, or logistics or anything. So maybe there's an issue with that. But if you can put on an event in China, I think you should put on an event in China with Weili Zhang again. The reaction she had there, you know, I think Kevin Ioli tweeted out the numbers that just came from her fight, and where it was showing the amount of people who saw it. So it'd be foolish if they could put it on there to not put it on there. Who she fights, I don't know. Michelle Waterson, Joanna Jacek. You can't forget Rose Namajunas as well. Okay, she lost to Jessica Andrade and Tatiana Suarez. That was the one I was going to mention, actually, because someone did a poll, and they had those 4 people, I think, on it, and Tatiana Suarez was had the least amount of votes. And I'm like, Tatiana Suarez might be the best 115-pound woman fighter in the world. And she is definitely up there. But you have to think about it, Dane. If you are having Weili Zhang fighting in China, do you want her fighting Tatiana Suarez?
Nah, no way.
Probably not. I'd be waiting to see if you could get Michelle Waterson or Joanna Jacek. I think Jacek versus Weili Zhang has the makings of just a brilliant fight. I'd absolutely love to see that fight. But there's lots of options. We talk about the women's 125-pound division and 35 and 45 sometimes. And okay, 125 is new, but 35, there's where are the options? Nunes is beating lots of people. There's no one really breaking through to make it. We've Durandamy coming back and Holly Holm and stuff like that. And 145 doesn't even exist anymore. But the 115 pounds division, it's what you want those divisions to become down the line. Just a fantastic division with loads of people coming through. And now the challengers right there as well, ready to challenge the new champion. And to be honest, I love that division. I think it's a fantastic division, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to be next for Weili Zhang.
Just quickly, not really a follow-up, Sean, on Casper, but I'm just going to say I'm surprised that Henry Cejudo hasn't called her out yet. I mean,
Ariel put it up something about Weili Zhang who's going to be next, and Henry Cejudo replied, "What about Triple C?"
I think. Here we go. He's already on it. Oh my God.
He is. Yeah, he did it. Yeah.
Wow, that guy's going to be wearing so much gold. All right, we got to get to this UFC 242 this UFC 242 preview, because obviously this is the big fight. This is the one that everyone is looking forward to. Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Dustin Poirier. And man, if you look at Dustin's opponents, Sean, over the last few years, they've primarily been strikers, and obviously Dustin likes to fight in very close range as opposed to sort of picking people apart on the outside and stuffing shots. So it's kind of fascinating when he clashes with a guy like Khabib, who has obviously not only the best wrestling in the division, but arguably in the UFC. Do you think he's prepared for wrestling like that? And the fact that how do you think it's going to work out when he likes to fight sort of in close range, which, is exactly where Khabib wants to be to get those takedowns?
I think it's absolutely perfect for Dustin Poirier if he can do it. I think that's how you beat Khabib. I think you fight Khabib at close range by pushing him back and bullying him backwards. So I think that's grand, but I do agree with you, and that's easier said than done, obviously. But yeah, I was watching fights, watching some of Dustin Poirier's old fights, and okay, he fought Eddie Alvarez recently, and Eddie Alvarez did take him down, but Poirier kind of pulled guard a bit. But I was going back through his fights, and it's really Danny Castillo was kind of the last big, wrestler, and Danny Castillo took him down, but that was a long, long time ago in WEC, so there hasn't really been much to look at. But even if there was, nobody's really like Khabib anyway, so it's a tough one to gauge. But there's obviously a lot to break down in this fight, and it's when you get to a level like Khabib or some of the best fighters in the world, if you're like Adesanya versus Whitaker coming up here soon, and I'm sure we'll be breaking down that fight or whatever. It's difficult to know if you're looking from like Whitaker's point at Adesanya. He's never fought anyone like Adesanya. It really isn't anyone like Adesanya. For any fighter, and it's the same for Khabib. There really isn't anyone like Khabib for Poirier. For us to compare. Now the other way around, there is a little bit. Conor McGregor's a very, very good southpaw. He likes to fight going forward. We didn't really see much of it against Khabib apart from that third round. We saw him against Michael Johnson, who landed a few shots and landed a few power shots as well. So maybe you can take a little bit of heart in that for Khabib. But this matchup, it's not that we're guessing how it's going to go, but it's very difficult to see exactly how this fight is going to go if you're just talking about it overall like that. But I'm sure we can get into it even deeper than that.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you look at Poirier, he likes to throw really long combos with a lot of looping punches. It's great in the sense of pressure, but also it opens you up to getting taken down. And if Khabib ducks under one of those punches, Sean, do you think we might see a bit less output from Dustin in this fight and see him a bit more measured with his combos? Because I think when I'm thinking about Dustin, I'm thinking about a guy that when he fought Conor McGregor, I feel like he wasn't there mentally for that fight. Like, I feel like Conor beat him mentally before that fight even happened. And this is a guy that I've heard in interviews when people bring up his losses. This is a guy that doesn't take it well in interviews. Mentally, he sort of gets put off. I don't want to say easily, but he's been affected before that. So do you think the mental toughness of Khabib moving forward and trying to grind him out is going to be stopping him from doing what he needs to do in this fight?
I don't think mentally, but I think, I suppose physically is the wrong word, but in the how the fight goes, I suppose it will, because if you're someone who's trying to strike, and even if there's a threat of the takedown there, it's going to put you off a little bit. But that is the main thing. There's a few main things, but I think that is the real crux of it against Khabib. If you are to beat Khabib, you have to realize that his name is Khabib Nurmagomedov and he's a human and he can be beaten. And if you do the right things against him, you can beat him. And that's a lot of people's issue against Khabib, against Jones, against, McGregor back in the day even. It's a lot of people's issue against fighters like them. So to me, looking at Dustin Poirier, that part of Dustin Poirier is actually behind him. I don't think he is that fighter anymore that went in there, and was mentally beaten against McGregor. I actually like the way he's spoken about his loss, especially the one to McGregor, where he has said, he kind of looks back at himself, then and says, I don't want to be like that anymore. And he's a lot of people, when they lose to guys like McGregor or someone who talks shit about him, they kind of take it very hard and then never stop. Even like a Jose Aldo kind of did that. He never kind of stopped talking about it. Said it was a fluke and stuff like that. Poirier never did that. He always took it well. And that all came to a culmination, I think, in the Max Holloway fight, because I went into that fight saying, like I'll probably do here over the next few minutes, saying how Dustin Poirier could win. The ways he can win. If he can produce it, he will win. And he did. He went out and he produced it against Max Holloway, a fantastic fighter. Now, a very different prospect to Khabib Nurmagomedov, but he went out and he produced it. And that's told me that this isn't just all talk. This isn't all Max Holloway or Dustin Poirier in contender fights, fighting good people, but not the quite best people in the world, and beating them. He went out and did it against one of the best people in the world. And he beat him, and he, I wouldn't say he destroyed Max Holloway, but he beat him convincingly. I think everyone agrees in that. Now, can he do that against Khabib Nurmagomedov? I think, right, if you're looking at him, can he do it against Khabib, and can he produce that game plan against Khabib? Maybe. I actually give him a good chance of doing it, because you say he fights from long, he throws those 1-2s, he throws those jabs. I think that's good against Khabib, because if you're jabbing Khabib, you're pushing him back, and that's what you need to do to beat him. You need to get Khabib reacting and going for takedowns that you can see from a mile away. When Khabib is pushing forward and chaining those takedowns together and gets a hold of you at all, it's very hard to get off him. So if you can push Khabib back and beat him that way, I think if that's the way the fight goes, where Dustin's pushing him back, he'll win the fight, and he'll win it pretty easily. But I don't think it's going to go like that the whole way through at all. Now, what I think, some of the fight's going to go, or maybe a lot of the fight's going to go, is Khabib going for the takedowns, pushing him against the cage. And then that's the next area I think is absolutely huge when you're looking at it from Poirier's point of view. I think he has to get control of Khabib's left wrist. You see, a lot of people listen to this, Israel Adesanya, his takedown defense, watch his fights. That's the takedown defense Dustin Poirier needs. He needs to get the overhook with his left hand, control with his right hand the left wrist of Khabib Nurmagomedov, pull it off. Look at the third round against Conor McGregor. That's what he did. 3 or 4 times McGregor did that. He controlled his left wrist, got either the underhook or the overhook. The overhook is better, and took it away. You saw the end of that round. He took McGregor down, and he took him down because McGregor was not able to control that wrist. That's the key to this fight. If he can stop that, control that wrist, get out, push Khabib against the cage, and get away from him, Dustin Poirier will win this fight. But that's easier said than done.
It's the left wrist. Every one of Khabib's possible future opponents needs to be listening to this right now, listening to you, Sean Sheehan. I was also going to say, you would have seen this in the Eddie Alvarez fight, specifically Dustin Poirier. He's got some really good leg kicks, and I'm wondering how much of a factor that could be, because Khabib keeps most of his weight on his lead foot. And obviously, if you take that foot away, it's going to be hard to explode to going for takedowns, and it's going to pay dividends in the later rounds. How much of a factor do you think this could be? Because obviously, when you do throw the leg kicks, there is always a threat of being, caught and then taken down as well.
I don't think it'll be a major factor. I think the best bet against Khabib is to not give him the slightest of chances. Like, I thought that flying knee that McGregor threw against him was just a stupid thing to do, to be honest. Just don't give Khabib that chance early. Now, if he can time his leg kicks well after combinations and land them, perfect. He should throw him. But I wouldn't be going out just going, I'm going to leg kick him for a full round. I wouldn't be doing that at all. I don't think that's good against Khabib, because if you give Khabib something to time like that, where, you know, okay, give him strikes to time maybe, but when you're striking, it's more, you're more in control and you can move your feet and have, you know, angles in and angles out. Whereas when you're kicking, you've obviously one leg off the ground and it's harder to move away quickly. So you're giving Khabib that second, just, you know, he doesn't have to catch the leg and take you down, but he can get inside, eat that leg kick and get around your body and push you against the fence where he wants to be. Khabib doesn't really get that many takedowns in the middle of the cage. You know, he gets them obviously against McGregor and against Michael Johnson. We saw him in a couple more, but his real bread and butter is against the cage. But I don't really think so. Look, another thing as well, when you're looking at this and you're looking at that sort of thing, little maybe integers, Dustin Poirier against Eddie Alvarez pulled guard a couple of times in that fight. And to me, if he gets in that position against the cage with Khabib and he starts pulling guard or kind of gives up on controlling that wrist, now I think that'll be foolhardy. I don't think it'll be a smart thing for Khabib or for Poirier to do, because you don't want to give Khabib that space. But Poirier's submissions are absolutely brilliant. And people maybe forget that. He's had loads of good submissions, almost submitted Eddie Alvarez, you know, ended up almost getting submitted himself because of it. But he will go for him and he will try that. So that's one thing I definitely wouldn't rule out. You know, if I was to get up Sunday morning or whatever and I hadn't watched the fights and I saw Poirier won by submission, I wouldn't be the most shocked person in the world. Now, I don't think it's the most likely thing, but I think, you know, we look at Tony Ferguson possibly fighting Khabib and other people, and we think maybe he has the ability to submit him. And Dustin Poirier is dangerous in that area as well. So that's another thing I'd definitely be looking at when you're looking from, you know, how Dustin Poirier maybe wins this fight.
In the Gaethje fight, we saw that not only Dustin obviously was tough, but also he has the ability to finish in the later rounds. Do you think that could be a factor against Khabib if it plays out similar to the Ali Quinta fight? Or do you think Khabib's style will tire Dustin out by the later rounds? Because I guess in the Anatomy of a Fighter videos that have been released, I do see, you know, Coach Harvey sort of telling Khabib, move your head, move your head, move your head every time he's coming in for those takedowns in the sparring. Do you think that Khabib will maybe make some mistakes and Dustin can capitalize later on in the fight when both fighters are a bit more tired?
Yeah, the thing, and let me just preface this by saying it might sound like I'm saying Poirier is going to beat Khabib. I'm looking for ways Poirier could possibly beat Khabib here, so I don't think these will all necessarily happen. But when you're looking at, say, a 5-round fight, or if you're looking at the cardio, who can keep going the longest or whatever, it's going to be very, very hard for someone with even fantastic cardio to keep going 5 rounds if Khabib takes him down for the first 4 rounds. You know, okay, Poirier has fantastic cardio. I spoke to his strength and conditioning coach last week. I interviewed him, and he was talking about how good he was and everything like that. So, you know, if there's a 5th round on the feet, and, you know, Poirier has a chance, but he's obviously a lot less of a chance. The thing I was thinking about, though, coming into this fight as well, you know, seeing as it is a 5-round fight, and you mentioned that Gaethje fight there, you know, the Eddie Alvarez fights as well, Poirier comes through wars, you know, a lot of times. He's done it before, and maybe that's something we've questioned in Poirier before, whether he could do that, and I think he's proven that he can. Now, has Khabib proven that? Now, Khabib has proven that he can destroy people and he can dominate people, but has he ever really been in an even fight over 5 rounds where it's 2-2 going into the 5th round and it's who wins this round wins the fight? You know, maybe I don't think he has. You know, I've watched all of his fights. He hasn't really been in that. So what if that happens? What if Poirier comes out and knocks him down in the 1st round, you know, and wins the 1st round, and maybe Khabib comes back and wins a round or 2, and if it's a close fight like that, how will Khabib react to that? How will his cardio bring him through if he isn't dominating through the whole fight? I think that's another interesting, maybe a little bit of an unknown coming into this fight. Now, if you were to ask me what to predict, I think he'd probably be grand. I think he's a tough guy. He's a very, very good chin. He's unbelievable cardio, and he'll keep going. But it's an integer that might decide how this fight goes as well.
And people may, in the comment section, be like, hey, you guys are focusing so much on Dustin as opposed to Khabib. It's because we know Khabib and what he's going to do. He's the favorite. I guess our goal here is to figure out, you know, what are the ways that Dustin Poirier can possibly win. You would have seen Dennis and I were at UFC 241. We saw the return of Nate Diaz, the massive, massive buzz that got. This will, of course, be Khabib's big return since the Conor fight. It's felt like such a long time since Khabib has fought, and it has been. You know, he had the Conor fight, you had the controversy, the suspension, everything in between. Where do you think this sort of ranks as far as biggest returns of 2019, Sean? And if all goes well, what do you think that a win would do for him sort of in Abu Dhabi as far as building his brand? You got to think it's going to be a massive, massive pro-Khabib crowd.
Yeah, I presume it would be. I'm not sure of like the whole landscape over there and stuff like that. You know, the last fight obviously was or did they have one since that? But the Damian Maia versus Anderson Silva, that was a big fight we kind of all remember, and that didn't go so well.
They had
so
Nog and Roy Nelson after that as well.
Yeah. So well, that wasn't great either, I suppose. Although that was a good knockout, I suppose. But yeah, it's tough to know. As when you're talking about buzz kind of all around the world, then I don't think having this over there is necessarily the best place to have it because of just the time it's going to be on. It's perfect time for me. It's starting at like 7 o'clock in the evening for me, so it's absolutely perfect. But for the people in America, and we maybe we'll learn a little bit how much Khabib was. Actually, we probably won't learn how much of a draw Khabib is unless he's a huge draw and brings in lots of people to watch this on ESPN. But when you're talking about buzz, I suppose for me, this is one of the most buzz fights of the year because of it, the fact it's on pay-per-view and BT Sports and it's coming, there's ads coming out of fucking everywhere, YouTube and Facebook, everywhere I go, you see ads for this card because BT are trying to sell it, obviously. But I'd be interested as, people in America to see how the buzz is over there. For it, I'm sure ESPN will be trying to sell it, seeing as it's on pay-per-view there and everything like that. But I don't think it'll help, to be honest. I think if it was on in Las Vegas or on in New York or something, it would be a lot better in terms of buzz. So yeah, to be honest, I think because of that, it hurts Khabib's buzz. And I'm not sure that's okay, it was a good decision because Khabib is big over there with, the Muslim community and everything like that. And, they want him over there. The people over there really like him and everything like that. And that's good to build that side of the world, I suppose, you might be better off talking to someone who's better at the politics and stuff than me on that, but you know what I mean? But for MMA and the boxing fan base, I suppose maybe not.
It's fascinating because it's like on one side, the UFC is giving up some potential numbers when it comes to pay-per-views and stuff like that. But I guess with ESPN paying them a certain amount of money per show, I think that I'm not sure what's going on in the back end, but what I understand from the WWE disclosure of them going over there and doing shows, they get paid a shitload of money to go over there and perform in front of the crowds over there. So it might be a situation where the UFC and the Khabib are profiting a lot of money. But let me ask you this. I mean, very top-heavy card. It makes sense, of course, because it's on the other side of the world. It's early in the morning. But we're seeing the same thing happen here in Melbourne with Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker. Of course, the co-main event, Dan Hooker versus Ali Quinter, which is nothing to sneeze at. But with this new ESPN deal, do you sort of see the UFC moving a little bit more to this whole boxing side of things where we're seeing a couple of big fights up the top and then they're sort of not really loading the card as much as they used to, I suppose?
They kind of have been doing that anyway, haven't they? Just because there's so many fights and they don't have enough fighters to fill all of those spots. And, every big ESPN card, it's almost every big card at this stage nearly has a title fight on it. So they're spreading them so thin. There's a lot more titles and stuff as well. But yeah, I think that's the way it's going to continue to go. I'm not sure it's because of ESPN. I think ESPN would love to have all the best fights in the world, stack the card as much as you can every few weeks, but I just don't think it's possible with the amount of cards they're putting on, to be honest. Like even, the Weili Zhang fight, the last day against Jessica Andrade, that was on Fight Pass, I believe, in America, wasn't it? And that was a title fight.
Yeah.
And, it's a difficult situation the UFC have put themselves in. But yeah, look, I think they should be stacking these cards more, especially like over in Melbourne, where it is. And I must ask you about pronouncing Melbourne. Am I insane, or am I saying Melbourne correctly and Americans can't say it? Or what's
Melbourne?
What's
You're almost
Melbourne,
there, but you know what? Take away the R and you've nailed it.
Melbourne?
It's like Melbourne. It's like MELBEN or BUN. Melbourne.
It's because
They're
they have their
fucked
own
up.
Melbourne somewhere in Florida, I think. So they're like Melbourne.
I'm going to
And like Brisbane, you would think it's like Brisbane, but it's like not Brisbane.
It's
but
kind of like
we're
we're
very
lazy. We're
lazy
skipping
here.
things. Yeah, we're lazy.
Yeah.
It's like Melbourne.
when Americans change it to actually try to say like Melbourne, it just sounds really weird. Like it's just call it Melbourne. Like it's grand.
John Anik nails it every time.
Does he?
Very
I
proud of him.
yeah.
I've noticed that. Yeah, and Ariel started saying it correctly recently as well. Let me just quickly ask you this, man. When you look, and I want to talk about me and Casper want to talk to you quickly about what's next and stuff like that. But when you look at, Dustin obviously has a shot this coming weekend against Khabib, but who is your pick for the guy that ends up beating Khabib out of the division? If you had to sort of put money on one guy, a lot of people have been speaking about Justin Gaethje. Possibly, if he ever reaches that spot, he could be the guy that beats Khabib. Who in your mind is the guy that can beat Khabib?
Dustin Poirier.
Out of the whole division, he's the guy. Number one.
At the moment, yeah. I always thought Max Holloway was a really, really bad matchup for Khabib Nurmagomedov, and him coming up in weight was very difficult. Obviously, didn't go too well for him. But I think I said it before that fight that I think Poirier was a worse matchup for Max than Dustin is, or than Khabib is. Did I say that right? Poirier is a worse matchup for Max than Khabib is. There you go. But yeah, look, to be honest, I think McGregor in his prime was a very tough matchup for Khabib because of the things I said earlier. Where you push forward and you hit with power. I think that's how you beat Khabib, by pushing forward, hitting with power. I know that was proven wrong, obviously. So and whoever it is, it's going to be difficult. You're looking at Tony Ferguson. I don't think so, to be honest. I think Tony Ferguson is too wild. Now, anything can happen in MMA. Come out and lay him out in 10 seconds. I don't know. But I think Tony Ferguson is too wild. I think Khabib would take him down and ragdoll him. I don't think he'd leave himself open enough for submissions against Tony Ferguson to get submitted. And after that, who else is there? Trophy who nails me? I don't really see anyone else really beating him. I think Poirier has a great chance. I think Poirier hits really, really, really hard. He has the ability to push forward. He has the ability to land shots. I think he has good takedown defense. I think ATT is a fantastic camp. He's a lot of good wrestlers there wrestling against him. If he has a good game plan coming in and he produces it, like he did in his last fight, good game plan and produced it, he can beat Khabib. So it's difficult. I think I'm like 50-50 on the fight this weekend. I really am. Wow. If you were to ask me who do you think who has the best chance, I'd probably say Poirier. I honestly would. If Max came up and had a few fights at that division and grew into the weight class, like I think he would, I think Max Holloway would beat Khabib. I pick Max Holloway to beat Khabib. But I don't think the other people there right now at the moment are going to beat Khabib, to be honest.
I mean, you got to think also like legacy-wise. If Dustin Poirier is able to beat Khabib, it speaks volumes considering that, yes, Dustin lost to Conor years ago at featherweight, but Conor got dismantled by Khabib, and if Dustin can beat him, that says a lot. If you're talking about sort of, I know we like to always look forward and sort of look at stakes. Tony Ferguson is without a doubt the rightful guy next in line, but depending on how Conor's legal situation plays out in the near future, how likely do you think it is that Conor faces the winner of this fight? And is it safe to sort of say that it really all comes down to how this investigation plays out, despite Khabib saying that, Dana don't call me, and how he won't fight Conor even if they present him? Because I feel like that camp goes back and forth. On 1 month they'll say, we don't want to fight Conor, he's a clown, he's this, that, we're not interested, he doesn't deserve it. Then the next month it's we want the biggest money fights, whoever gives us the most money, whether it's Conor, GSP, whoever. How do you think this would play out?
I don't know. It's a difficult one to call, really. I think if McGregor wants to come back, and he can come back, and he wants to fight, and he says, I want to fight Khabib, I think the UFC will give it to him, because what's to lose for the UFC? They get a huge money fight. They get a rematch of the biggest money fight of all time, and they'd be absolutely delighted with that. Khabib, I think he talks a lot. He talks about legacy and who deserves it and who doesn't. I refuse to give this guy a fight. But I think he'd give the fight to McGregor. I think that rematch would happen if the UFC push for it. Now, does McGregor want to do that? Is it wise for McGregor to come back and look for that fight straight away? No,
I don't think it's wise. I think
it's definitely, well, it's 100% definitely not wise. But he's not a man who's done wise things in his life, especially recently. But with fights, coming into like that Dustin Poirier fight or the Chad Mendes fight, sorry. You saw anyone who watched the documentary saw the footage. His knees were gone. He'd a broken foot coming into the Khabib fight. He's had other injuries coming into other fights that people probably don't even know about. And he's still taking them. He's taking guys on short notice.
Do you think that was a mistake, Sean, though, looking at the situation now? He says the ankle was blown up, or he was fighting on one leg going into Khabib. Do you think that was a mistake by him taking that fight?
I think that was one mistake. I think the biggest mistake, and I said it at the time, was taking the fight on short notice. He took it on like 2 months' notice, something like that. He took it in October, I think it was, and I think lots of people were talking about maybe December. Give him another couple of months to prepare for it. But in that kind of time, I don't think McGregor was winning that fight anyway, or getting close to Khabib. But with the injury, when you break your foot like that, and he did break his foot, a lot of people talking about, that was known around at the time that he had broken his foot before the fight, and he should have pulled out. Most fighters would pull out. You break a foot, you pull out. But that's been McGregor down through history. And it served him so well up until that fight. But I think right now where Conor McGregor is, when McGregor was, stay ready so I don't have to get ready, fighting everyone every couple of months, that was how he got so good. That was how people loved him so much and how he built himself up. Conor McGregor now is no longer that. He's no longer this guy that's in form and can win and the whole world is at his feet and he's just taking everyone apart. It's a different situation now. McGregor has to go back in there, build his way back up if he can. I'm not sure. I don't think he probably can, but that's the situation he finds himself at the moment. And jumping into Khabib Nurmagomedov fight would not be the right way to go. I think Anthony Pettis would be the way to go. I think it's a very, very winnable fight for him. A big name. I know he lost to Nate Diaz and all that, and people will talk about that, but when they do, it's going to be probably Nate Diaz talking, I already beat that guy, and now you're going to beat him. That brings that fight again, and that's another big fight for him. So, to me, honest, something like that I think is perfect for Conor McGregor. Even a Frankie Edgar, as much as I started off this podcast at the start, but something like that. Khabib, no, not for me. With the lightweight title picture as well, Khabib or Poirier against Ferguson, I think should be the next fight. But whether it will be or not, I'd be very skeptical, to be honest.
And bring back Justin Gaethje into the equation. If he beats Cowboy Cerrone, maybe that's a fight they could look at making as well. Very fascinating. Just quickly, Sean, with Conor McGregor and how he's perceived, what's the feeling like over there in your neck of the woods? I mean, I know a lot of people, big fans of Conor McGregor over there, but not biggest fans when he talks too much trash or acts like a fool. Is there a lot of negative sort of perception towards him right now over there?
Oh, yeah, big style. But there always kind of has been. Look, there was the young people kind of coming up, absolutely loved Conor McGregor, and they loved what he stood for and everything. Ireland is a very, I said it like an American, Ireland, it's a very... It's a very kind of still changing a little bit, but it's very traditional. We respect, we have a lot of respect here in Ireland, and our big games are amateur games, and we love sports here, and we have a lot of respect in sports. The All Ireland football final was today, 82,000 people watching amateur players playing, and we have a lot of respect and stuff like that. And when someone like McGregor comes up, a lot of people don't like that, the way he did it, roaring and shouting and, breaking fucking buses and everything like that. And, what he's done recently has made them people even more, strong in their dislike for him, and has lost him a lot of fans as well. I saw someone tweeting there a couple of days ago after, the latest incident that I can't believe I used to idolize this guy. And I think that's a sentiment of a lot of people, to be honest. Now, my good friend Pete Carroll tweeted out, we've seen Tyson Fury, we've seen loads of other people go from the lowest of lows and climb back. People love comeback stories in MMA. And, McGregor said in that interview with Ariel, he's got the world at his feet. He can either stamp all over it or use it to rise himself up. So that's Conor McGregor's proposition now. He can get all those people back. He can get all those fans back. But will he? Who knows?
Fascinating stuff. Of course, follow the man on Sean Sheehan, BA Severe. I'm very fascinated to see if Conor McGregor, I feel like with a guy like Conor McGregor is like one of those many fighters where you just got to keep him busy with fights, because when he's not fighting, trouble's going to come his way. So just keep him in camp as much as you can. And I hope that does happen. Of course, like I was saying, check out Severe MMA for all of your latest stuff. Sean, just quickly, what's coming up on Severe MMA? We know there's been some really fun exclusives for people that have subscribed.
Yeah, actually, Bellator Dublin is coming up here in a couple of weeks, so I'll have a lot of interviews with the fighters coming up on that. We actually have the main eventer, Callan, who's fighting James Gallagher. We just posted an interview with him there yesterday, so that'll be good, and there'll be loads of other people, Q&As and everything all week. I have an interview, actually, I don't know when this has gone out, but it'll be up on YouTube and our Patreon by the time this goes out, with Ian Gary. He's fighting on the upcoming Cage Warriors card this weekend. So if you don't know Ian Gary, I think I've mentioned him on this card before, or on this podcast before. He's the next top prospect, I think, coming out of Ireland. He's 1-0 at the moment. A really, really good fighter, really, really good prospect. Lots of people saying he's the best prospect since Conor McGregor to come out of Ireland. So he's worth watching. He's a very, very interesting guy as well. Very, very well spoken and all. So there's an interview up with him and loads more stuff. like I've like 5 or 6 podcasts every week. I think it costs €1 a week to sign up, so I don't know what that is in Australian dollars, but not very much. So.
100 Australian dollars.
That dollar sucks.
Send it to me. Send that to me.
No. I was gonna say, man. Obviously, we're big fans of what you do. And by the way, if Sean Sheehan does a fight week, how could you not watch him do interviews in person with fighters? It's got to be some of the funniest stuff that I've seen in quite some time. So make sure to follow him. Make sure to check out Severe MMA. Make sure to subscribe and make sure to check out all of that content. The guys have a great time, and that is it for Submission Radio for this week. Enjoy the fights this weekend, UFC 242. Just a quick reminder: the T-shirts. Check these out. Vegemite Submission Radio T-shirt. Look at Casper wearing that VB Submission Radio T-shirt. Jump on them, 1 week left to get those T-shirts before they are gone. Don't message us because we won't hook you up. And with that, guys, that is it with another episode of Submission Radio. Enjoy the fight. Sean, let's see what happens this weekend. I wonder if there's any positive comments underneath about some of the things that we said. Only one way to find out. We'll check it out later. Make sure to comment your thoughts, though. Who is winning the main event this weekend? Do you agree with Sean? Does Dustin have a shot? Do you believe Dustin can do it? And how do you think it happens? With that, guys, we will catch you soon. Have a great weekend and stay safe.